You are in Data Warehouse Mistakes You Can't Afford to Make. This is an informative but lighthearted presentation about data warehousing. So let's get started. Years ago, I was a senior BI consultant for a firm, and I was the guy that they sent in when stuff was bad. And so I'm called out to a client site that we didn't build their warehouse. And can everybody hear me, by the way? Okay, good. I've never been told that I'm quiet, shy, retiring, and people can't hear me, but I thought I would check. Sent out, and the complaint was we're having trouble hitting our load window. We can't hit our load window. So I went out, met the boss, you know, the whole thing, make sure you smell right, you know, you're dressed decently and clean. And then he hands me off to the tech, and I'm walking back with the tech. This is the guy who was in charge of building this. And I'm trying to figure out what's going on, what the problem is. And I'm asking him questions like, okay, so what kind of warehouse is it? Is it a Kimball style or is it an Inman style? Well, I don't know. Kimball. Okay, great. If you're a data warehousing person, I'm not saying that you have to be of the Kimball variety or the Inman variety, right? If you don't know off the top of your head which one of these two you should choose, that doesn't bode well for this engagement. So Kimball, well, by that I mean, do you have dimensions and facts? And this is your, you know, you don't often have an operational data store. This is your operational data store. You know, which of these do you have? Kimball, I guess. All right, great. So we sit down and I said, okay, so where's your documentation? What do you got? I got a diagram. Okay, so I was hoping to find something like that. You know, fact table, dimensions, maybe some lines, you know, relationships, right? And by the way, that's our dog. So I'm to find something cute, something that's, you know, relatively well-formed, well-bred. Unfortunately, no, she's a Maltese, a very expensive Maltese. That dog has cost me a lot of money. She had to go to the vet today. Cost me more for the vet bill than it did for me to travel here, stay the night, and everything else. But anyway, she's a very sweet dog. My girlfriend loves her to death. But I was expecting to see something like this, and that's what I found. That's literally the model that came out. That is literally the model that came out. Now, I did not have to doctor this. Normally, if I were to use something that was a client's, I wouldn't show it to you. I would like change all the things. I don't have to doctor it. It's ridiculously small because it's so wide. And it's not even done. That's not the bottom. I just ran out of screen. Okay? So what did it look like? Well, the master table, which is this, was 250 fields. And they had bad data types. There were car 100s everywhere and all sorts of other stuff, just bad data types. Every number in there was a, you know, big int, whether it needed to be or not. So there were all sorts of problems, just terrible data types. That record, or that table is 50 million records. Now, that's not, if people in the room, who's got tables that are bigger than 50 million? There are some, right? That's not out of the ordinary, right? But when it's 250 fields wide with bad data types and everything else, well, that's a killer, right? And, you know, 200 plus indexes on that one table, which were all fragmented to beat the band, really just terrible. Now, remember, the things that I'm going to tell you in this presentation are general rule of thumb. Do not go back to your shop and say, Dave says we have too many indexes. Dave didn't say that. You didn't hire Dave to come out and look at your stuff. Okay? This is all general rule of thumb. What you have may be perfect. It may be outside the norm, but don't go back and just change everything because you saw a slide that looked like it. Okay? But it was 200 indexes and fragmented all over the place. The items table was 300 plus million records, and that was actually fairly well formed. What you have here is sort of a gigantic dimension table because these were all descriptive terms and a fact table. Sort of. But it had like facts from everywhere in it. Yes. And it was 250 fields wide, and they were descriptive and terrible data types. It was just And they couldn't figure out why they couldn't meet their load window. So when I tried to document it, I hooked it up to a third-party product, which I'm not representing them, so I'm not going to name what it is. But you point it at your packages, and it should document what's going on. And it came back with nothing. The reason it came back with nothing was because they had never deployed a package. They had run it all from Business Intelligence Development Studio on his desktop. Now, we're all laughing, right? And I prefer to think of it as laughing with rather than laughing at, okay? Because we've all done crap like this. I mean, I did way back in the day. Maybe not quite like that, but I built some things that later on I went, who wrote this crap? And it turned out it was me, okay? But I say this to you to get your attention because some of the things I'm going to tell you are some of the things that you can do to avoid building things like this. Let's face it, if somebody's got nothing but time and they have an employer who doesn't believe in training and believe in helping, and you know, if all you got is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And that's how you get this kind of stuff. You get somebody with time but no direction or training. Okay? All right. So, who am I? I'm David Stein. I'm an independent consultant, and these are the things I specialize in: data warehousing, dimensional modeling, ETL, and training. I'm always looking for interesting projects, particularly interesting ones. And I have business cards up here. If anybody has any questions that we can't get solved in the amount of time we have, feel free to take one, message me, okay? And I blog at MadeToMentor.com, and I tweet at MadeToMentor. Okay, and I'm also the technical editor of this book, SSIS Design Patterns. Excellent book right here. I'm going to give away a copy to whomever makes a very insightful comment that makes me think. You don't have to laugh real loud if my jokes are terrible. I don't do that. But if you ask me something that shows that you're really paying attention in this late day session, you're going to get a book. I'm also going to give away a book of Knight's Microsoft SQL Server 2012 Integration Services Trainer. I haven't read it, but if it's Brian's, it's going to be pretty good. Okay? All right. So the first problem, we're going to cover problems of the social variety, then we're going to cover problems with ETL, dimensional modeling, those kinds of things. They'll be broken out into groups, okay? Ignoring politics. The business sponsor, who can tell me what the business sponsor is? Well, how does Kimball define a business sponsor? Yes, sir. Okay, that's not a bad definition. Kimball would describe it, and I would too, as this is the guy, or gal, excuse me, the gal, right? The person, right, who is spearheading this. This is the person who, the kind of person you want to look for is a person with enough power to get things done and also enough vision to understand what you're trying to do. Quite often, and I'm hoping there aren't any business people who are listening to this or that people don't listen to the recorder, quite often this is the guy who thinks that he knows better than everybody else and he's on the leading edge and big data is cool and you know what I mean? That's the kind of guy you want, all right? Because he will, if you inspire him, he will run with this and make sure people make time for you. Okay, that's the business sponsor. If you don't have the right business sponsor, you'll often have departmental infighting. And it's not that people are bad, people are busy. They've got TPS reports to do, all right? Office space, right? They've got their little reports. That's their job. And their job is the same amount of work whether you're doing your little data warehouse project or not. And right now, they don't see that your job really helps them, at least not yet. It takes their time. Quite often, a business sponsor will help motivate them. A little bit of political savvy is important, okay? I used to approach it like this. Hey, listen, so, you know, mean old Bob in the corner office is really riding me hard to get this stuff done to cover your area of this warehouse. I know that he's going to be yelling at me and then he's going to yell at your boss and it's going to come down and the whole thing. Can we maybe find some time so that we don't have to go through this? It's you and me against the suits, right? When you're talking to the accounting person or whatever. But they'll get the point. Hey, if we don't get this done, that guy is going to yell at your boss and then it's going to go down and you're going to get yelled at, right? But it's better to kind of present it in a positive way, right? Little flies with honey instead of vinegar kind of thing. Whoops. That was weird. Okay. Neglecting the business process analysis. Business knowledge is key. You are delivering value to the business. You are not building a database. The users don't care. Tim Costello said something very interesting about the users don't care about the data. They care about information. That's true. They don't care what the data looks like. They care about results, okay? Deliver value to the business. Solve their problems. Having knowledge about that business type helps a great deal. So if I'm brought into a business where I don't know the business, maybe you're like in media or something and I haven't done that kind of business before, I will find the guy who is the guy on site who knows that business and knows a little bit about data or maybe a lot about data and partner with him to kind of shorten that learning curve. But most of the questions I'm going to ask your team isn't about what reports they're doing. It's how they do their business. Consultant specialization is key. If you can find somebody, if you don't have the in-house knowledge at all to do this kind of thing, and you work in the real estate market, try and find somebody who does real estate data warehousing. It'll shortcut the process. He's already asked somebody else all those dumb questions. Now, he's going to ask similar questions in a much more abbreviated way, but you're paying for less hours to do investigation. All right. So you pair with business experts. We covered that. Ask the right questions. I'm going to try and get this to work. I brought a portable speaker, which is not working very well, so I've now put the microphone down near the laptop. I'm hoping this works. I generally like to put little videos in to break up to break it up. There we go, especially in the afternoon because you guys are asleep.
Back here live at the Waterfront Village with my friend the zombie, Jonathan. You're looking good. Jonathan just got an awesome face paint job. What do you think?
I like turtles.
All right, you're great zombie. And good times here at the Waterfront Village, open for the next 11.
Right? So it's important to ask the right questions. I don't ask them what they want. But that's what you're told to do. I'm a little different. I don't ask you what you want because you don't know what you want. They don't know. And they'll tell you something because they want to be helpful, and nobody wants to look stupid. So they will tell you something, and what usually comes out of their mouth is something like, because you're talking to the CEO, I want an internet scorecard with this whole thing, and I want dancing bunnies, and I want to be able to tell that, I'm profitable and which blah, blah, blahs and all this stuff and where I'm losing money, blah, blah, blah. Okay, don't ask, because then he expects you to deliver that. And that is the end of the project. That's not in the beginning at all, right? So how do you know what you should do? You find out what the business is. You do find out about what some of their data needs are. There are certain ways to interview for that. You don't actually ask them what they want. It's not productive, and it's even counterproductive because they set up their own mental thought process of what you're going to deliver because you asked what they wanted. Yes? You're just asking the same question, right? I mean, not trying to be rude. The question was, for people who are listening, why don't you ask, what do you think you want? It's really the same question, right? So,
there's always landmines there because sometimes the customers get upset if you don't ask them what they want. They think you're driving the process too much, which you are.
Very true.
And you got to be politically correct and make sure that the scope is right.
Most of my job has nothing to do with ones and zeros. Most of the job of a data warehouse architect is social. Okay, and of course, I don't have time to go into all that. We could just sit down and talk for a whole day about it, okay? But there are certain ways that you have to go on site and talk to their techs and talk to their accounting people. There's different kinds of people, and you have to be able to size them up very quickly. It's not a manipulative thing. It's only considered manipulative if it's a bad thing, if you're doing something to somebody's detriment. Right. They don't know what kind of value you're about to bring into their lives. Well, right, in a way, what trouble you're about to cause them. So consequently, they see it as trouble. He's going to take my time, and I've got to do TPS reports. There's a whole social aspect of this that's actually more important than the ones and zeros. Waterfall development is, of course, a mistake. How many people have heard waterfall's bad? Waterfall's bad. Okay, and it is. Okay? But you know when they talk about why waterfall is bad? It's because your project failed. I mean, I can't tell how many times I've been brought in and, oh, we're the 5th generation of this project, right? Where are the other 4 generations? I'd like to ask them and find out what happened. They're no longer here, right? Waterfall in itself isn't bad, okay? We do try to work iteratively. However, here has been the problem up until recently. We'll go over it in a minute with the bus matrix and all that. In the past, if you wanted to deliver a metric, some kind of measurement or some kind of analysis for a client, you had to do 75% of the work of the warehouse before you could get there. You had to do all of the dimensions, and we'll go into that a little bit later, but you had to do all the dimensions before you could tie it to a fact table. As fast as you want to work, that takes a long time. The analysis process, the design process, the questioning, all that stuff takes a long time. Now, once you get to that point, if you've got good quality dimensions, you can pump out new metrics every other day, right? But getting to that point is hard, all right? How many people have heard of BIML? Business Intelligence Markup Language. It's going to change the game. Now, I don't work for them. I don't receive any, I mean, I'm just telling you because I drank the Kool-Aid. And I don't drink Kool-Aid, okay? I don't. I've seen all sorts of dancing bunnies, data warehouse in a box, projects come and go, and I kind of laughed. I said, yeah, it's great, boss. And then I went back to work because I knew it wasn't going to work. I've made BIML work, okay? I'm rapidly getting to the point where I can design a warehouse and all of the objects needed to load it in through the various phases as fast as I designed the warehouse. My code interprets the model and the metadata that I embed in the model and literally builds all the views and the packages going backwards. That's as iterative as it gets. It's changing the game. The next time you see me present, it will probably be on BIML. Okay? It's changing the game. Continuous testing is important. Don't wait to find out there's a problem with your data because you were notified by a user. That's not the time. Trust is key. If they don't trust what's coming out of your warehouse, they will never use it. And you just spent forever making a database. So continuous testing. There are tools for that assist, right? You could do things like Redgate sells data compare, and Toad has a functionality to do that too. Set up automatic reports that check before and after and make sure that they match, right? Huh? Who are the users? If everybody who's going to write reports or use your cubes or whatever against the data warehouse, if they don't trust it, oh God, you just bought yourself a whole world of hurt. The minute they catch a problem and they go, hey, especially if it's a big problem, how did you not catch this? Oh God, they're going to question every single report that comes out of that thing for the rest of your life. You're going to be doing data discovery just to prove that you're right.
In short, do you have a way when you're creating these things to promote it so that they do trust it, or do you just let it sell itself?
I test it thoroughly, or we have people, business analysts or whatever, test it who are on the team. Test it thoroughly before they see it, right? And a lot of times, here's the thing, and this is just unfair, but it's the way it is. A lot of times it's not your fault. Somebody will get into the OLTP and change something. and do it in a way that you can't catch because it doesn't update that date changed field or whatever. They do a little data fix. And then your warehouse is wrong, right? Or they'll do something like this. They'll go in there and the source system updates over itself. And it's a corrective action, all right? And maybe it's allowed. When they do their report and say, how much are the open sales, the booked sales for per state, whatever, and then they look at yours and yours is different, that's because that fact record came in when it was attributed to the other state. And just because they update the state doesn't necessarily mean that that automatically goes through and changes those records. Do you see what I mean? And that doesn't mean you're wrong. It means they're wrong, but the data doesn't match. It's just unfair, but it's like it or lump it. There's a reason why this kind of work pays so well. It's hard. Yes, ma'am. Am I missing I didn't see really, I saw a question at the end, but it's very specific. It's your responsibility, if you're the architect or you're the ETL architect, to document where records go, to verify that you're getting all the records, right? Okay. That you have data that is not in the warehouse that's in the OLTP. Okay. The data warehouse developer, the ETL developer? Well, you need to find a new data warehouse developer. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be flippant, but the thing is, the buck has to stop somewhere. A similar question is, well, what do I do if they do data fixes? Well, you document that they do them. So, for example, I ran into a problem where they were doing data fixes, and when they wanted me to trust this date field that gets updated by the OLTP system, the software that runs over it, the .NET whatever, right? And so when it makes a change, it updates that date. But that date isn't forced, right? So they promise that when they do, manual changes, we'll update that date. No, they won't. They'll forget, right? Don't trust them. Insist that they put a row version or a timestamp on there. Or, that's another problem, when they say, make them fix the source. Oh, God, what color is the sky in your world? Right? They won't. So you have to do things like write ETL processes that run through the whole thing and check it again on the weekend. And then send you a report and say, there's a discrepancy. Right? You can say, well, that's a lot of time. Life's rough in the big city. That's why you make the big bucks. And if you're doing BIML, you can automate that stuff. You can create those packages that check this stuff automatically. So I'm not up here to say I have all the answers. I'm pointing out where the pitfalls are. Right? I have some of the answers. And if you brought me in and I went and looked at all your stuff, I could probably find some answers for you specifically, right? But the thing is, all the answers are different. We might have the same problem, but because of the nature of our source systems, the answers are actually different. Somebody have a question? Yes, sir. When I'm saying, okay, so the question is the testing, is it real time or whatnot? I'm talking about when you're doing your first loads and you're checking it, right? I would write a routine on each one of those that would verify it at that time at the end of the load and then tell me if there's a discrepancy and what it is. Right? I actually do unit testing in data warehousing. I run unit tests that run every time you check something in, run a unit test to make sure it works. So continuous testing using data compare. Now, let's talk about the low-hanging fruit. This is related to the agile thing. This is your bus matrix, okay? And Kimball, this isn't my idea. This is Kimball, right? I mean, this happens to be a sample that I built, but it's basically Kimball's work. You have business processes along the left. This eventually becomes fact tables, and not necessarily one for one. Incoming orders might be 3 or 4 separate fact tables, okay? And then you have dimensions along the top, all right? This is what I was describing the problem is. So if we decide, hey, we need to do incoming orders first, well, look at all those dimensions we have to do. And dimensions are the hardest part of data warehousing. It's not the fact tables. Fact tables are easy. This is why it resists Agile. Before you deliver your first fact table, you have to do most of the dimension. Okay? How do you determine which business process you should do first? You look for the easy one that makes the most money. Right. If I can go in and deliver value in a reasonable period of time because I picked an easy one and because it happens to be high value, I win. If I save you a boatload of money, if I save you $1 million with the first bit of work, I just bought myself $1 million to play with. Not really, but I bought some grace, right? And then I can go in and make sure everything's fixed, and then I can go into the next fact table or whatever, and it bought me some credit, right? Here's the thing. Data warehousing is like divorce. It really is. Why is divorce so expensive? Because it's worth it. It's true. Why is data warehousing so expensive? It's worth it. Okay? But the problem is your company doesn't mind. I imagine there's one or two people going, my company doesn't pay $1 for anything. Well, then you need to find a new job. Okay? Your company doesn't mind spending money if it makes them money. But they're tired of spending money on initiatives that go nowhere. So that puts you or me or whoever goes in there at an automatic disadvantage because you are paying for sins of the past. Is it fair? No. But suck it up, Buttercup. I mean, it's the way it is, right? So we pick something that, with the help of a source system expert, that helps. So you don't have to do all the investigation yourself first. Something that is relatively easy, that's worth big money. Yes, sir.
When these projects are long and drawn out and they don't see a lot of value until the end, do you have a methodology which tells you when you find a low-hanging fruit?
Okay, so I would have answered that question differently 3 months ago.
Okay.
Because of BIML, and I'm not prepared to show this isn't a BIML talk, okay? But because of BIML, I'm literally going to come into your company and deliver a data set. See, the customers don't care that you have separate dimensions and facts. They don't care. What they care is that this came out, okay? And that is a mixture of facts and their dimensions. Now, it's only certain dimensional attributes. It's the customer number and customer name or whatever, and state or whatever, right? And product or whatever. But when you do a report with Transact SQL, it all comes out as one line anyway. Well, multiple lines, but big, wide records, right? So with BIML, I come in, and I simply spec your first model. That's it. It's a table. Now, does this work on terabytes? No, I'm not delivering terabytes. This is in development. But because I spec this thing in the model and it automatically built all the objects behind it, I deliver value very fast. They start querying it. Oh my God, we got a warehouse where this guy is actually delivering something. And then I BIMlize a dim customer. And I automatically, by changing the metadata, make it start joining to the fact, and it does that load process properly with the lookups.
And you try to set some expectations along the way as you're delivering something, saying this is how quick things will come.
Think about it. Wait a second. I didn't have to set expectations. I'm literally going to be able to deliver value fast enough, assuming that you have a source system expert and I don't have to do all the investigation myself, right? I mean, it's not magic, right? Assuming I have cooperation, the turnaround is so rapid, it really gets over that hump. I mean, the hump is literally, now, did I deliver the same amount of value in this little hump that I would have delivered in this big hump in 6 months? No. But because I turned around and provided value right away, it buys me credit. And then I literally start adding your dimensions one by one, and the tables built them, or the tables and the SSIS packages build themselves based on metadata and the code I've already written. It really is a silver bullet. And I don't care if you use it or not. It doesn't do me any good. I'm telling you, I've done a multi-terabyte data warehouse installation over the past 3 months, multi-terabyte, and I opened SSIS once a week. And I did the ETL. I don't have to open it up anymore. The packages build themselves. It's so cool. I wish I could just share it with you. It's so cool when you right-click and say, okay, build them, and it builds 50 packages, and they just go boom, 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 and they're all right because you wrote the code. There's nothing to check into source control. They're not physical objects. They're not permanent. The only thing you check into source control is the script. And it literally, I swear to God, I sat there at this desk one time, the first time I made it work, and it came up and went boom, 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 and I started to giggle. And somebody walked by like, oh, God, Dave's lost it. I literally giggled because I was like, I just created 10 fact table loads. I don't have to do those. It's great. Somebody had a question over here. Yes, sir. Don't. So the question is, in that kind of scenario, have I already extracted the data to SQL? Don't necessarily have to. It helps if it's in an RDBMS, right? But it doesn't have to be SQL. Yeah, I mean, SSIS can talk to almost anything. So, all right, so let's continue back where we are. I don't want this to become a BIML talk. All right, so data modeling without tools is a big mistake that people make. I'm sorry, I get real excited and then I go down a rabbit hole. I apologize. Data modeling without tools is a big mistake. You need, if you're doing anything other than your first star, you really need something to look at that breaks them out into multiple stars or snowflakes. It really helps to understand what's going on, and it really helps explain it to your business analysts and your power users. Okay? Source control is a big thing. When I don't have source control, before I drank the Kool-Aid of source control, I used to name my files 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Now I don't have to worry about any of that stuff because if I make a mistake, I can go backwards. Right? I just restore from the source. And you can get free source control. There are free source control options. You don't have to pay for that. Documentation. Documentation is key. And I have another slide in a minute about it. Don't neglect documentation. Do it while you build. I do a lot of my documentation, almost all of it, in the model itself because I control that. Don't fall into the trap of, now remember, this is my opinion. Other people have different opinions, but this is my room. This is my opinion. Don't fall into the trap of having a model and then have somebody copy all these objects over to Excel, and then put all the descriptions in Excel, and then like put that up on SharePoint, and then they have to keep track of that all the time, and it's never in sync because somebody hasn't followed up and checked in. Oh God, what a nightmare! I try and keep all the as much of the documentation as I can right in my model. Okay, and in fact, that documentation is what causes my packages to build because of the way I document. All right? Is it expensive? Well, a guy from Embarcadero just walked in the room. So it depends on what you need. If you're going with a full enterprise product, you're going to spend several $1,000s a client, right? But there are free alternatives. If you're just starting out, you can use the Kimball spreadsheet and spec out your stuff. Now, is it all visual? Not really. It's not ideal. But did you know that if you download the free Kimball spreadsheet and you actually fill out the document as it is, and you hit run, it will actually build all your DDL for you? Did you know that? It's cool. So you actually do your documentation, and it builds the Transact SQL for you. Is it perfect? No. Right? There are free options too. Oracle has a SQL Server, has a really terrible name, like Oracle SQL Server Development Modeler, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. It's like this wide, right? Look it up. You can find it. Anybody know what it's called? Anybody using it? It's a decent modeling tool. It's free. And there are other SDN, things like that for source control. They're free. Okay. General dimension modeling mistakes. Dimensional modeling mistakes. Getting late in the day. Keep it simple, stupid. Don't walk your dog with a helicopter. If I look at your model, and this is what it looks like, you did it wrong. I don't care how complex your business is. If a trained dimensional modeler can't come in and within an hour understand exactly what you're doing, you did it wrong. End of story. You did it wrong. Now, let me ask you this. This is an interesting question. How do you know when your dimensional model is right? To whom? Your dimensional model is right, or let me rephrase that, is not right until your reasonably advanced users can query it by themselves. If they can't, if they have to look at some HTML document that you produced for all the descriptions of your columns or whatnot, or they have to know how to join this or this and have a special where clause, or they've got like customers and prospects and something else in the same table, or you have like a dim people and it has all your employees and all your salespeople and all your customers in it, you know, the contacts, and you have to know what to filter by, you failed. If the users can't use your model, you failed. That was the whole point of being there. Let me finish. Even if you're going to put a cube over it, and so you think, well, I'm going to build the cube. Yeah, but what happens if you get hit by a bus? Even if you build a cube, this is a funny thing. They will always say, we are never going to query the model directly. Really? Come on. Yes, they are. You're lucky if they're not querying your staging behind your back. And I forbid it. I block them out. They don't have access to it.
So the user, you presume that the user has access to the data warehouse?
When I build, so the question is, do I presume that the user has access to the data warehouse? I presume when I build a warehouse for somebody that no matter what they say, this thing's got to be simple enough that a power user can easily query it, because they will. What will happen is they'll go down and buy Tableau, or I probably shouldn't mention third-party products, one of those dancing bunny products, because the CEO wants to see red light, green light, stop light, and fans and the right? And they're going to hook it up directly to it, because maybe it doesn't read in cubes or whatever. They're going to. So if you can't query it, let me rephrase that, not you, and not your best ETL guy or whatever. I'm talking about Cindy from accounting. If she can't query it, you failed. There was no other reason for you to exist. You're not building a database for you to use.
You still presume that a user which is not a SQL person should be able to query it?
Yes. A user should be able to, a reasonably competent user. Now, maybe, I don't know, the guy who shovels the walk or something can't just grab a computer and start. But if they've got a reasonable knowledge of Excel, this is why I put primary and foreign keys in there. When you pull it out into Excel, it goes, oh, right? I know how to join this, right? Sometimes we try and we think we get really cute. In fact, I think that's one of my, I'll get to it in a second. One of my things is don't get cute. Hey, I can make this one fewer table if I do. Whoa. And then it's just a filter by this. They won't filter by this. They'll screw up. And then when they do that analysis, even though they're wrong, you're wrong. It's got to be simple. That's why we do this. Your job is to reduce really complex stuff to really simple stuff. That's it. Yes, sir.
Would you show them those models and ask them if they can read it? If it's easy enough for them?
Yeah, I do that. Yeah, I would do that. Absolutely. Of course, I don't let them have access to the bare tables. I usually put views over the top of it. But because in that way I can maybe clean up some things that I maybe made a sin here or there or whatever, right? To clean it up, I'll put it into a view that's simpler. But yeah, they're gonna query it. Yeah, what does this mean? So iterative data modeling can be a mistake because it's so painful to fix pre-BIML. How many people do SSIS for a living? What, 2 of us, 3 of us, 4 of us? Okay. How easy is it to make changes to your model and do your packages? No. I was talking to a guy who's actually doing another presentation on data warehousing right now, and he's got a team of 40 ETL developers. And you know why they're doing it? It's because they've got all these different little permutations of their packages, and they're doing them manually. And that's really what I made this slide was what I was thinking about. You can't be changing all of your stuff in your model because SSIS is so painful. I mean, have you ever opened SSIS just simply to go, yes, I know, update the metadata, okay, save, check it back into TFS? That takes you 20 minutes. It's maddening. Remember that chick who used to do the weight loss thing? Stop the insanity, right? God, that's how I feel about SSIS. But I don't have to use it much anymore. All right, so often it's because of client pressure. They don't want to spend the time doing the investigation, right? They want something now. And then BIML, and also general dimensional modeling mistake, normalization. Your job is not to save space. Now, remember, this is an it depends kind of thing, but if you can, just make them stars. Don't start snowflaking because you want to eliminate a couple of bytes here or there or whatever. Make them stars. Denormalize your dimensions. Repeat information. If you're an OLTP person and you moved into data warehousing, oh, you see some really interesting models. They look like OLTP. Okay, dimension table mistakes. Non-conformed. Conformed dimensions are dimensions that mean the same thing throughout your entire company. So if you have something like dim products, and by the way, you don't have to preface your dimensions with dim and your fact tables with fact. It depends on the client, what they want me to do, and I do it either way, okay? But it just makes it easier when we talk about dim product. It's a dimension. Dim products have to be the same thing everywhere in your company. If they're not, then you created a table that's off by itself that joins for a couple of little reports. You created something siloed. And this stuff can cause holy wars in an organization. Unfortunately, you have to have them. Tell your business sponsor, I need conform dimensions. And get the Kimball books and say, because Master Kimball says so. This isn't Cindy saying it. He says so in all of these books. And I said so. They've got to be conformed. Too few or too many. I worked on one project where when you're dealing with demographic stuff, there was a dim sex. Male, M, F, or U, unknown. That was a dimension. Really? They had two different dimensions for ethnicity and race. I still don't understand that whole thing because there's like different combinations of like Hispanic and non-Hispanic, and then you have another one that's like the typical race dimension thing. It's a government thing, right? You put these together in a junk dimension. I shouldn't look at your dimensional model and see tiny little tables everywhere because it starts to look too much like OLTP. Okay? But it's a common thing you see. Why have a dim sex? Put it in the fact table or build it into the dim customer or something, or make it into a dim demographics, which would be a junk dimension. Not slowly changing. Slowly changing dimensions are hard. Processing them is hard. Understanding what to do with them is hard. And some people go, well, it's too hard, so I won't do it. And then you see that. Put in the time. Explain to your users what you mean. Explain to them how important it can be to track history in a data warehouse that you don't have in the OLTP. It's worth it. Not using surrogate keys. Surrogate keys are the meaningless numbering column, right? And then you join your fact tables and your dimension tables on that. Don't cheat and start joining on your business keys. But I see it a lot. You need surrogate keys for conform dimensions, slowly changing, surrogate keys. It's hard to find a doggy picture with keys, right? Faster joins, index efficiency, consistency is key. Do not cheat and say, well, these business keys are set in stone, like ICD-9 codes or whatever. What happens when you hit ICD-10? And they will eventually. I mean, they will, right? So if you join via the business keys, you're stuck. Just join via surrogate keys. Now, the one situation that I do that's different is I don't do the standard Kimball dimension with the surrogate key that's actually a smart key. I actually join via the date. I use date because it's 3 bytes via versus 4, and I have blog articles on it if you want to read it. But that's the one situation where I deviate. Okay, so fact table mistakes, grain violations. Do not mix your grains. How long do I have? Is it 45 after? Yeah. Okay. So grain violations, do not mix your grain. Common example, the grain of the fact table is the event that you're measuring. It is when you go through Walmart, it is the ding. ding, when you check out, okay? Don't mix your grain, but you will be tempted to. A common example is freight. If you work in a manufacturer and you get charged by UPS a certain amount per box, but that box has multiple line items in it, how do you assign a certain amount per box? Right? So if your grain, or per item, so if your grain is per item in your fact table, you're going to have to either find some way to logically, and this is a business agreement, break it down. Maybe you know the weight of every object, and then you add up all the weight in that box, divide by it, whatever, right, to get it there, or it doesn't belong there. Do not have, if you had 4 items in that box, have 4 records, one of them says $6 and the rest of them say 0. Don't do it. That's violating the grain. Report specific fact tables. People usually start out this way. They start exporting stuff, and then they report from it, and they think that's a warehouse. I don't go in and ask to see your reports. If your reports are successful, unless the job was to lessen the burden on your LTP, I don't do those. You got those. I designed something that will answer those reports, but a million other things you haven't even thought of yet. Okay? Don't lock into, I've seen trained data warehouse people go, all right, give me your list of reports. Oh, goodness. That's not how you do it.
But at some point, that's your requirement set, right? The people said, I would like to have this kind of report.
That's different. That's I need this kind of data to do something with. I'm not going to ask you for stuff that you already have. Right? Now, by the way, unless the reports are of a nature that don't lend themselves to a warehouse, we don't typically print invoices out of our data warehouse with addresses, complete addresses or whatever. We don't typically do that, right? Data warehouse is for analysis, not for printing late billing statements or something, okay? But the vast majority of the reports are going to work because we're building something that lends itself to, it's flexible. It's the whole reason why you're doing it. Duplicating data. You will see people who have, the ordering information over here and the ordering information over here because it happens to be some slightly different application, or I want a report that does blah, and I want a report that does blah, and they just start putting out multiple fact tables that contain most of the same information. If you have multiple versions of the truth, you are just asking for them not to match, and then they will not trust you ever. Ineffective field names. I've seen warehouses where you'd swear that they had to pay money per letter for their field names. Why? A lot of databases, a lot of OLTPs have existed for a long time when you were only allowed 8 characters, period. And so they have terribly abbreviated field names. Don't propagate that. Be descriptive. Inadequate documentation. It's essential. It is continuous. It is a time saver. Whoops. It's a time saver. It is not a cost center. It should be a profit center. It should be productivity. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a client and said, hey, so why'd you decide to do this? What's with this here in the ETL? Why'd you filter these out? And they go, I don't remember. You didn't document it? Because when somebody says your report's wrong, you're going to have to know this stuff. Even if you're just documenting to speed up your future development, do it. Inadequate data profiling. Data stinks. I have never seen data that's particularly good, right? But they all think they've got good data because they can print their invoices out of it. Right? They don't realize that some of their data has countries and some of it doesn't, and a million different things, right? Don't assume that they know what they're talking about. Their data is not clean. Okay, so database mistakes, inefficient data types. We kind of touched on this a little bit. Every byte you waste out of 100 million records is 100 megabytes. And you could say, so what? It's 100 megabytes. Well, yeah, disk is cheap, but memory isn't. And the goal is to have as much of this warehouse in RAM so that way it queries fast. So every place that you've wasted space, you're going to pay. You won't even know it. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Date time versus date, or I can never remember if it's small date time or date time 2. Every time I talk about it, I have to look it up. But it's the one that goes down to the minute, right? If you can get by with the one that goes down to a minute, it's like 4 bytes instead of 8, and it's accurate enough for most situations. Okay. Car versus varchar. I can't tell you how many times I've seen varchar 1, varchar 2. You do realize that you pay a penalty for varchar. So if it's anything under 6, you're probably paying more just to make it varchar than you would save, right? Or you see car 100. Oh, God. Now, if it really is 100, I mean, if they're really mostly like 98, 97, then by all means make it a car 100. But every other time you're just wasting space, hemorrhaging space. Unicode versus standard. People always say, well, SSIS defaults to Unicode, so it should be Unicode. Wrong. I mean, you're right that it kind of defaults to Unicode, and it sucks because it does for those of us who are doing primarily standard and non-Unicode names, right? But that doesn't mean that you should just give in to that. And if you're doing automation like through BIML, you don't have to worry about it. Okay? And the integer types know your limits to small int, tiny int, all that. Okay? And if you guess wrong, because int goes to something like 2.4 billion or something, minus 2.4 to 2.4 billion, and then you find out, oh God, we've got 2 billion, we're going to run out of numbers or whatever, that's not that big of an adjustment to go up. It really isn't. Nulls. Oh, if you can, squash them, kill them. Don't allow them. Because users with different third-party tools will do all sorts of incorrect statistical analysis because they all handle nulls differently. Try and make your stuff not null and figure out what you're going to do about it. Replace it with some value, something. Now, and there's certain situations where you literally don't know if there's a value for this and you don't know what it is, so therefore the only value that's really realistic is null. But for the most part, I find nulls in a data warehouse because people were too lazy to investigate these things, come to a consensus about what to do about them. A null or an empty string? You mean a null or an empty string? To me, they're almost the same thing when in the data warehousing context. I mean, I know, God, some DBAers are going, oh, they're not the same thing. I know they're not the same thing. But from a rational point of view, in our work, they're almost the same thing. So when I do things like null testing for ratios, how many are null or whatever, I also test for blanks at the same time. I just lump them in. Okay, primary and foreign keys, use them. I can't tell you how many times I've been brought onto a project and I go, why aren't you guys using primary and foreign keys? Oh, it slows down ETL, blah, blah, blah. Buy better hardware. Because I'm telling you, I take your data warehouse, I put it on dev or whatever, and then I apply primary and foreign keys, and guess what? Failure, 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 because your ETL wasn't properly accounting for it everywhere. You're human. You will make mistakes. SQL Server will catch them. Now, it might go kerplunk in the middle of the night, but I'd rather know about a problem than not know. Yes. So I'm a big proponent of primary and foreign keys. Indexing, either too much or too little. Data warehouses in general should be heavily indexed. However, remember that you pay a penalty at write time. If you're doing all your writes overnight, you're making your load windows and everything's hunky-dory, enjoy. Make your queries as fast as possible. But always ride that fence. Always look. See what indexes are being used and which aren't being used. Figure out through testing when it's faster to load by just simply dropping the indexes, loading the increment, and then re-indexing the whole table. Often it is. Do testing. ETL mistakes, inadequate planning, inadequate or missing framework. How many people are actually using a comprehensive SSIS framework that logs and does all that stuff? How many are? Nobody. So how do you know when your stuff goes kerplunk in the night and what's really wrong with it? How do you know when it didn't fail, but you're not getting the number of records you're supposed to get? How do you know? You know how you know? When your users tell you, hey, those reports for Monday are weird. Oh, that's not the time to know. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. I want to see the report. that says, hey, the incoming sales is 3 standard deviations from the mean. If you have a good framework, if you put your time in and built a framework that does this for you, it doesn't cost you any more time. You just look really, really smart. Yeah, there's log tables. Okay, package configurations and parameters for 2008 and before. 2012 is a different matter. And basically what this involves is don't recreate your connection strings. I see people do this all the time. They go and they recreate their connection strings manually because they pushed it to production. Use package configurations or properly use the functionality that's involved with 2012. Okay? Dirty data management. People start off on these data initiatives and Sally's in charge of the incoming sales data, and anything that doesn't match this criteria goes to her through MDS, right? Master Data Services. But Sally doesn't do her job. Doesn't get done. Whatever, there's just too much and it falls behind or whatever. You got to stick to it. It has to be somebody's job. Somebody has to do this or records are missing. Okay, excessive T-SQL use, I see this all the time, or excessive script test use. You open a package and it's nothing more than a custom script test. You know why that happens? Because you took a .NET developer and told him you wanted him to do packages. So he did script tests. It's what he knows how to do. Now, I'm not saying you should go home and rewrite all your packages. What you're doing may be perfect for what you're doing. However, this is one of these things you should look at if you have nothing but script tests in a row. Why? So let's review. There are business problems like finding a sponsor, like not handling the political climate well enough, right? You have modeling problems like not using a tool, too few dimensions, not enough, denormalization, right? Not denormalizing enough. You have, I took that out to save time for this presentation. I apologize. Database problems like incorrect data types, not accounting for nulls, not logging errors, all sorts of things like that. And then the ETL, not taking the time to use a framework. Not taking the time to use a framework. You don't want to find out Tuesday at 2 a.m. when this thing failed, how are we going to fix this? Because our packages aren't restartable. Have you ever tried to wake up in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, because somebody in the NOC, the network something center, calls you and says, this thing failed, and you got a 20 terabyte data warehouse, and you're going, we're going to have to restore. You're not going to be done by 7 a.m. That's not the time to try and come up with something creative. Any questions? The code will be downloadable from the link, and I will also, not the code, the PowerPoint presentation, and I will also be sending it to the SQL Saturday folks so they can put it up on their website. Yes, sir. I think, okay, so he was asking a question about BIML script, what I'm talking about. Yes, I think what you're talking about is code that was written by Andy Leonard where he calls it his incremental load pattern. I don't do it that way, but it's a valid pattern. What I'm doing right now is using merge to handle my dimensions. I actually use T-SQL merge to do my fact loads too. The merge statements are auto-generated. And I am building my views and stored procedures programmatically going backwards from that too, based upon metadata. My goal is to literally create a dimensional model in whatever tool I'm choosing. Right now it happens to be ModelWrite, the program I'm using, and run my packages from that. It will literally load it because I told it to. I will be here for a while. I have business cards up here, and I will be going to the after party. If anybody's going and has questions, I will be there. Please hit me up. Thank you. Fill out your evaluations, guys. Please fill out the evaluations.